Somebody walked in, so then he walked.
He's talking with a man. Looks like a man.
We could start without him, right?
It's your meeting.
Started at the time you want.
Tell him, yeah.
And all of us got times on the line.
So does Pat have something else that's on the agenda?
Oh, yeah? Oh, okay, okay.
So we're just gonna defer it. So do we wanna move it up?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's Public Works, item K.
So you'll have to
We'll
take
pull
it
it,
up.
yep, we'll pull it off the agenda.
Yeah.
I felt so much energy, like I
You ready to roll, guys? This regular meeting of the Detroit Lake City Council is called to order. And at this time, I'd like to invite you all to please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The minutes of the regular city council meeting held June 14th and the special city council meeting held June 21st are before the council. Is there anyone on the council or anyone in the audience that wishes to make any changes to those minutes as they are printed? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second it.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the minutes from the regular meeting held June 14th and the special city council meeting held June 21st. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. The consent agenda is before the council. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered separately in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to either remove or add an item to the consent agenda? Madeline?
I do, Your Honor.
Yes.
Under Public Works, we need to remove 6K.
Okay. Any other changes? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of item 6K.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Elizabeth Wafel is here from Flaherty and Hood, and she's going to present us with the annual Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities update. So welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you, and I brought paper copies of the report, but it sounds like you might have electronic ones. Do you need any paper ones, Kelsey, or? Give those to you as well. And thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm very excited to be here. It's always great to come visit Detroit Lakes during the summer. And for the audience members, first let's see if I can get this to work. Oops, I gotta turn it on. There we go. Okay, the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities is an organization of more than 100 cities working together across Greater Minnesota. Detroit Lakes is probably one of our oldest and most active members. The issues we work on are local government aid and property taxes, economic development, annexation and land use, transportation, environment and energy, and labor and employment. We're going to talk about this legislative session, and it's one of those things that, to quote a great poet, it started off with a bang, ended with a whimper. I guess that's a close paraphrase of it. But, going into this session, we had high hopes, big budget surplus. It was supposed to be a bonding year. We were expecting, to address the infrastructure needs having to do with the federal infrastructure bill, and there was unspent ARPA money. We've got a lot of needs for different things across Greater Minnesota, and we were hoping that with these resources, we'd be able to address some of them. Again, sunny outlook at the February forecast with $9.3 billion. I think that was our highest ever projected surplus. But there were a lot of challenges going into it. The constraints of COVID continued to be a problem. It was also one of these years where it's redistricting, and that meant, we had legislators who found out midway through the year they might be losing their seat because they're facing somebody else or they decide to retire. Big election year with all constitutional offices plus all senators and representatives up for office, and ongoing political polarization, which really had an even more significant effect this year. Also, finally, we had unfinished business that needed to be dealt with in terms of the hero pay and the depleted unemployment insurance fund. Our goals, couple different things. Again, local government aid, we were pushing both for an LGA increase and a change to the formula. I think Detroit Lakes is well aware of why we were pushing for the LGA formula change. We'll talk about that a little bit. Also wanted an infrastructure-focused bonding bill with money for wastewater, childcare, business development, the BDPI program, as well as housing infrastructure. Also, again, childcare continues to be an issue that we wanted to deal with, and we continue to push for more money for large and small city streets. Again, it was a little better than last session, but still mostly hybrid this year due to the pandemic. The Capitol had reopened back in June. And even the House opened a little bit this year, but it still was a lot of meetings online. Some legislators were doing in-person meeting, but a lot of them continued to meet via Zoom, email, phone, and text. And, that's not all bad. I mean, one of the good things about that is that you can bring folks, from our cities into these meetings, but I'll be honest, it is challenging at the end of the day when you can't just track a legislator down that's, walking next to you, and it continues to be a challenge. Hopefully it will be better next year. We did employ a variety of different advocacy strategies in this hybrid environment, including, education videos, press conferences, webinars, and working together with other organizations to try and move forward on our agenda. Here's a picture of our folks doing both in-person and video testimony. But let's talk about LGA. Now, we started meeting in October, and I think most of you probably know why we're doing that. Every a couple sessions, we take a look at that formula. The interest had been strong in doing that. One of the challenges, LGA continues to be a good program, but as cities change, there are needs to relook at making sure that formula represents the needs of our cities. And so the CGMC, working with other city groups, nonpartisan staff, as well as the Department of Revenue, met multiple times starting in October of 2021 to come up with a new formula. We looked at the existing formula, recognized that it was outdated. I mean, cities like Detroit Lakes, I think you're well aware we need to update it to make sure that it's meeting your needs. So looked at over 40 different potential new need factors and looked at ones that really had a strong impact on how do you explain the differences in city spending. And so we have, our sort of in-house analytical capacity. We've got Anya McDonald, our in-house analyst, and continue to work with Jeff Van Wyken, who we hire on a contract basis to make sure that we understand the implications of all possible formulas. And we thought we came up with a pretty good one. It looked in some ways similar to what it was before in terms of evaluating the city need versus looking at the capacity to meet that needs, continued to divide by city size. The biggest change in that formula was the new need factors, however. Again, trying to better sort of capture and make sure that we were taking care of our cities. Unfortunately, as with most things this legislative session, it didn't get across the finish line. We were really happy to see, your outgoing Representative Paul Marquardt did include the updated formula and an increase in his bill. We were disappointed to see that the Senate did not include that in their tax bill, and so we had the increase but not the formula change in the final tax bill. But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter, because if you don't pass a tax bill, you don't get your LGA increase, and that was one of many big disappointments this legislative session. This chart is hard to read, but if you what this shows is where Detroit Lakes would have fared under various scenarios. The highest amount, obviously, one of the reasons we wanted to get that formula and funding increase in there is that it would, your LGA, because your city, for better or worse, your property tax values have been increasing in Detroit Lakes, probably at a higher proportion than other places in the state. So that's impacted your LGA, but your LGA would have increased under the new formula. But like I said, when you don't get a tax bill done, don't get that done, that didn't happen. But we will continue to be pushing on this. We do think that that LGA formula needs to change and that we need more money into the program. Bonding. This year, again, when you've got a budget surplus, you know, I think it's important to take a look at what are some of the big needs for our cities. And one of them is wastewater and drinking water. We joined with a group of labor and environmental groups to really push for a transformational package there to both tackle our wastewater needs. I know you folks have recently upgraded your facility, but there's a lot of other places in the cities that are still doing that, plus sewer mains that need to be fixed. The other challenge that we're starting to face is that by October 2024, you have to have all of your, lead lines mapped throughout the state, and potentially a lot of cities are going to be facing replacements. So we added that to our list of things to do in terms of seeking funds for doing the inventory and replacement. We had a great package, well received, but again, when you don't have a bonding bill, it's hard to get those things done. I've been doing this for 13 sessions, I think, and the first time in my memory, and quite frankly, I think if you even asked my former boss, Tim Flaherty, I don't think he'd remember a bonding session where we did not see a bonding bill. You know, we ticked to the end of the legislative session, and neither the House nor the Senate ever produced a bonding bill. They were working behind the scenes, but nothing ever materialized, and so what we're facing is a lot of cities out there are in kind of a world of hurt. I'm happy for you guys that you got your wastewater facilities done. A lot of our other members are just going to be really challenged over the next couple of years moving forward on that. We're going to be continue to push on that as well. You know, other issues, similar story. Housing, childcare. We're able to get money for childcare grants in one of the bills, but again, jobs bill never agreed to, and no bonding bill meant no money for the childcare facilities grant program. Housing also continues. Workforce housing continues to be an important issue. We were thrilled to see the Senate included $10 million for workforce home ownership program in there. We don't even know, honestly, whether that would have made it into the final bill, because that was one they could not come to an agreement on. And again, with no bonding bill, no money into the infrastructure grant program. Sorry, it's kind of depressing, isn't it? Look, one bright spot, broadband. This is an issue. Again, the pandemic continued to highlight why this is important. And we were happy to see, it's something we have continued to support. More money was put into the border-to-border broadband program, and more money is coming in from the federal government to try and fund additional border-to-border grants. We are continuing to sort of watch and see what happens with these programs, try and make sure it's getting directed to the right places. I was just meeting with Commerce electronically last week to talk about sort of, looking forward at, are things being targeted in the right area? So we're happy to see some success there. We just wish that success would have spilled over to other areas. Small city streets, again, something we're continuing to push on, both for big cities and small cities, but again, without a transportation bill, didn't see any advances in that area. Just kind of it was a depressing session, and sort of, even going into that last week, the Constitution requires that we adjourn. You have to pass all bills by the end of Sunday, and there was even a little bit of hope on May 18th, 4 days before then. The Senate and House leaders, along with the governor, had come up, with an agreement on their spending targets, told the chairs to go out and work on that. We saw a jobs bill come through. We saw a tax conference bill come through, but then on Sunday, everything kind of sputtered. And, they adjourned right after midnight with nothing done. I don't think there's there's no perfect explanation on why that happened. I do think sort of the hyper-partisanship really probably pays into it. It's always tough in an election year, and there are many people that say it's harder to actually govern when you have a big surplus than when you have a deficit, because then it's really a balance of competing priorities. But, in an election year when things continue to get more partisan, it's really hard to come together on an agreement. There was a lot of finger pointing at the end. I just think that constituents of all and stakeholders of all types are just very disappointed. I mean, we came out the day after and, calling for a special session in a press release and did a press conference 2 days later. It's something, we'll continue to push on. I don't know if we have any hopes of seeing that, but it was disappointing and sort of shows what we need to be doing in the future. Looking ahead, big legislative turnover. I think you folks know that. You're going to be getting a new senator and representative. We could see changes in control of the Senate or the House, and we've got a competitive governor's race. It's a budget year next year, and there's could be a large surplus to deal with. Again, that becomes in some ways that can be both a blessing and a challenge. And we will be playing a critical role in educating the new and returning legislators on greater Minnesota issues. We will be working with you. Again, like I said, I know you've got new senator, new representatives coming in, and it's going to be really important for us to work together to make sure they understand, the importance of local government aid, the importance of our land use laws, the importance of, programs like BDPI and the PFA. It's going to be really important to work together on those. Upcoming events, not too late to join us in Red Wing. Going to be a great city conference there. Our November conference will be a little closer in Alexandria. Would love to see some of you. And we already have our Legislative Action Day set. I think that is going to be an extremely important one, again, because of all of those new legislators. So please put that one on your calendar. It really does make a difference when we all come together and speak with our legislators at these events. I want to say a big thank you. Again, like I said, Detroit Lakes is probably one of our oldest members, has always been long active, and it is that active membership that really allows us to get things done at the Capitol. But that's not the only, it's that active membership that allows us to get things done. But I want to point out some special active membership. And, I guess, does anyone have any questions about my presentation before I jump into the end of it?
Do you think there'll be bonding next year? We want to get our ball field fixed up.
Do I think there will be bonding next year? I would put it at, I don't know if I want to attach a percentage. I am hopeful. I think some of it is going to depend on the results of the election, particularly, honestly, the primary election, I think, could have a bigger impact, even than the November election, depending upon sort of the forces that are in control of both caucuses. But there are some huge infrastructure needs that went unmet. Like I said, you guys were fortunate in some ways that you were sort of that first wave of really expensive wastewater facilities. You've got, Mankato looking at a $60 million plant, Austin looking at an $80 million plant. I think Albert Lee looking at a $60 million plant. There's other, Rochester, I think, is on the line for a $100 million plant. The lead line thing is something not to be dismissed. Plus, we've got crumbling roads and a bunch of other needs. I don't know how the state doesn't do that, but we really don't know who's going to be coming in yet. And so I would say I'm optimistic, but of course, I would also say if we can't get enough bonding bill done, we've probably got larger problems. So I think it will definitely be discussed. And it's even possible it could get, I wouldn't say probable, it's possible it could get discussed after the primary election. My hopes are more that we'll see something happen. As you'll remember, back in 2016, they screwed the bonding bill up at the very last minute, but came back in and did it, the next year. 2018, they also screwed that up, but came back in and had to do it. I have kind of a habit of doing that, but I do think we'll get one next year, but remains to be seen. Sorry, long explanation there.
Other questions for Elizabeth? But you're also here for another reason.
I am here for another reason. And, like I said, the CGMC is able to function well because we have really active members. And we have some folks who really stand up above and beyond the crowd. And I am here to talk to you about one of those folks today. I work on two basic areas for the CGMC. I do the environmental and energy work. Vernell's always been a big help on that. But I also do annexation and land use. And I was very excited I think it was last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, when Bradley said, who can we get to serve as a chair on this thing? And I said, I think we should talk to Kelsey Clem of Detroit Lakes. He seems to know a lot about this area. And for better or worse, he said yes to that. And he has been the co-chair and has been a member of our board. But he's, even for a member of the board, is particularly active. We didn't get into it in the presentation. There might be some, I think, in our report a little bit about that. But we faced several challenges sort of in this area this year. There was a proposal coming from a legislator down in Bloomington. I think it was a very good-hearted proposal, but it was challenging to try and make some changes to try and, in his head, promote affordable housing. I don't know that the legislation actually did that, but the reason I was able to figure out what the legislation actually did, which was really sort of get at the heart of and take away powers from cities to sort of do their own work on developing housing. I could not have understood that or lobbied well on that without the help of Kelsey Clem. Kelsey is an extremely patient. He understands this area. He spent a lot of time sort of explaining to me, literally on the phone, going point by point through this legislation. What does it mean? What does it do? When I called upon him to talk about annexation, again, we were facing annexation issues. Again, there to explain, help us understand, because I don't do that work on a daily basis. And he really, really just, again, above and beyond, a lot of our active volunteers. And I can't tell you sort of how much that really helped our organization. And so, because of that, we are awarding him, he's the only staff member receiving this award this year, but we are awarding him the Excellence in Service. And it's very rare that I actually get to present this in person. Bradley usually does this at the city summer conference, but Kelsey can't make it, so we decided, and I talked to the mayor about this beforehand, so he knew it was coming, but wanted to present this to Kelsey in person, and the council gets to see this. But again, Kelsey, I couldn't do my job without you, and I'm saying that quite literally. So thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you. You want to make a speech?
No. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, thank you again for coming. We appreciate it. So at this time, I'm going to adjourn the regular meeting and call to order a public hearing to receive public comments on the proposed street and utility improvements for Terry Street. And I will turn over the proceedings to our city engineer, John Pratt.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Is it working tonight? Yep. Maybe. There it is. So we have hopefully a pretty short public hearing tonight for what we're calling now the Dandrew subdivision, which is also part of the Becker County Food Pantry project. I'll explain how that goes in just a second here. But like all of our public hearings for these, the intent of this is just to provide information to the public and gain some input. It's a requirement of State Statute 429 anytime we're using special assessments to fund a portion of the improvement project. So we'll go over some of the existing conditions, what we're planning to do, what the estimated costs are, the estimated special assessments, and then there'll be a period for comments or questions after this. So a little background. This is maybe a little bit unique. We actually started off, and the city's been working for a number of months with the Becker County Food Pantry and trying to find a new facility or a new site for their proposed new facility. And as it stands right now, that new facility would be on Terry Street on a chunk of property that the Development Authority is acquiring and going to potentially then sell back to the food pantry for their new building. We covered that last month in June. We had a memo on that, on what we needed to do to sort of get sewer and water to there. And sort of coincidentally, about that time, developer Dan Holsgrove is considering development of some property just to the south on the other side of Terry Street that we've looked at before. That plat has been titled, I believe it's Dandrew subdivision. And that plat, the preliminary plat has been submitted to go to Planning Commission this month, and we'll move through the process there. But we did a preliminary engineering report for this same piece of property about a year ago. I think it was in July of 2021 for the previous owner, but never did a hearing on it, never made it to that point. So these two things have sort of collided, and we've kind of mashed them together into this, this hearing, because some of the sewer and water is going to have some mutual benefits to each of these projects. So as far as existing infrastructure, there's no site or no street within the Dandrew plat right now. Both sites would be accessed off of Terry Street, the food pantry to the north, the Dandrew subdivisions off to the south. There is existing water main along the south side of Terry Street that we could utilize to service both of the sites. There is no existing sanitary sewer, however, with immediate access to either of the sites, and that was sort of the point of challenge on the food pantry site, is we needed to get sewer over to that. So there is sewer at the north end of Broadway, which is just sort of east of the both of these sites. No storm sewer within each site, but there is storm sewer on the north side of Terry Street that we could utilize as needed. So proposed improvements. The bigger or more complicated improvement is we need to get sewer over to these sites from the north end of Broadway. So we would actually extend that from the north end of Broadway along Terry Street, on the south side of Terry Street, outside of Terry Street, which is a little unusual. We have a wider than usual right-of-way area there that we can do, and saves us some money from having to actually tear up Terry Street, which is relatively new. There's some unique circumstances there we're going to have to work through. It's going to require some tree removal of some large mature trees that are out in the right-of-way there, and also an encroaching fence and shed from a neighboring property. But we should be able to get that main in and extend it over to the sites doing that. Then we would simply extend a service lateral over across Terry Street to the food pantry, and then sort of the usual main extensions into the Dandrew subdivision, which would be an 8-inch PVC main and manholes and 4-inch service laterals to the proposed lots. Water main's a little more simple. We have water main, like I said, right on the south side of Terry Street. We just simply extend a service lateral across the road to the food pantry site on the north side of Terry Street for the food pantry. And then the subdivision would get served by a 6-inch PVC main, hydrants, valves, and then some service laterals to each of the lots. Storm sewer, again, the Dandrew subdivision would need its own storm sewer collection system. Pretty typical. We'd put in storm sewer to collect the water. It would discharge to some treatment basins within the subdivision. The plat has some space dedicated for that. And then we'd probably construct an overflow back to that Terry Street, that existing storm sewer on Terry Street. So if those basins ever got too full, it would have somewhere to spill away from the site on. And then the food pantry would actually probably take care of their own storm sewer treatment as part of their site development. Streets, new streets built to typical subdivision standards. Typically, we have been doing in our subdivisions 36-foot wide urban section streets with curb and gutter. One consideration that's been talked about a little bit, at least at a staff level, I wanted to mention is, potentially considering a narrower street. This is a very short street. It's going to service about 9 lots. I think there's at least an argument to be made that we would consider something narrower. It kind of plays into the affordable housing discussion that Elizabeth just talked about. Narrower street, we have less runoff, we have less storm water we got to deal with, it's less snow to push, and ultimately a reduction in project costs. So that's one of the things that we were looking at a little bit, and we'll see where that goes as the project moves ahead. Another sort of unique scenario here that I at least want to mention is considering the extension of Broadway Avenue to Terry Street. You can kind of see on the screen there's this sort of unique scenario where we have this cul-de-sac that stops about 30 feet short of making a connection with Terry Street. So we're going to be into that cul-de-sac tying into that sewer anyhow. Might be a good time to consider getting rid of the cul-de-sac and actually making a connection to the street like a typical street network. So there's just a little prettier picture of what we're looking at doing. It's obviously a little hard to see there, but you can see some of the colored lines for the utilities and the proposed street extension into the Dandrew subdivision. You can see the food pantry site off to the north there. Project costs, estimated project costs in total with water, sewer, street, stormwater improvements, both for the Dandrew project and what's required to get sewer and water over to the food pantry site, we're looking at a little over $600,000. This would be funded by the city, Becker County Food Pantry, through a development agreement, and also special assessments through a development agreement with the developer of the Dandrew property. We'd allocate those per usual through the city's assessment policy and through the development agreements that we get executed with those parties. So sanitary sewer is a little unique in this case because, again, we kind of have some running costs to get over to these sites. And the memo that we provided last month talked about the city assuming 50% of those costs of getting over there. The food pantry assuming 25% of those remaining costs, and the Dandrew subdivision assuming 75% of the remaining costs. Otherwise, 100% of the sanitary sewer within the subdivision be assessed. Water main's a little more straightforward. 100% of the water main costs would be assessed to the Dandrew subdivision. Service laterals would get assessed to the properties, the ones within the subdivision to the subdivision. The service laterals that go to the food pantry, assessed to the food pantry. The street, we have some restoration costs over on the Broadway end of things where we extend that sewer, and some costs fixing up Terry Street, getting across there with those service laterals. So 25% of those would go to the food pantry, and the remaining of the street costs would be assessed to the Dandrew subdivision. So what does all that mean? Up in the table, this is how this shakes out. The city would be on the hook for about $105,000 of the overall project cost. The food pantry, just a little over $40,000 in special assessments for their sewer and water service. And then the Dandrew subdivision would be looking at something just south of $500,000 for the street, sewer, water, stormwater, etc. Now, the Dandrew one gets split further again because the city assumes some of the cost of the storm sewer. So talk about that. We just distribute those costs for the Dandrew subdivision per our policy, basically dividing the costs out by the number of lots to come up with a rate per lot. With the exception of again, the city picking up half of the stormwater costs. So this is what it looks like right now, and I guess I would caution you that we're basing this on prices that we've seen this summer, and we all know costs have been pretty extraordinary this summer. Maybe there's some hope as we go into the next year that these temper just a little bit, but as it sits right now, they'd be about $53,000 per lot. Assuming that they want to move ahead with the project, the developer would be required to prepay 25% of those assessable costs before we get into construction. That should say, should be a correction. Before we get into construction, they'd have to pay 25% of those. The balance is assessed over 20 years following completion, or well, the developer has the option of deferring it for 5 years followed by a 15-year term, or simply do a 20-year term following completion. Schedule, this is a little wonky and maybe not the best way to describe it. This was looking at if we were to bid the project, this next spring and do the construction next year. It's my understanding now that we may need to expedite this because I think we're going to need to get sewer and water to the food pantry yet this year. So what we would probably try to do would be to hustle, assuming the developer and the food pantry are on board, get the plans turned around by next month for approval, authorized to bid, open bids in September, and then sort of do this first phase of getting the sewer and water over to the food pantry at least this year, and whatever else they wanted to get into the subdivision, they could get, and then finish it up next spring with street work and things like that in the Dandrew subdivision. So those are some things we'd have to work out yet with the developer. So that's it, Mayor.
So is there anyone in the audience that has any questions for the city engineer? Or you could also make a comment if you would like to do so. And if not,
I got one question.
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, Dale, the food pantry. If you didn't get it to do till summer of 2023, would we be able to line something up where our contractor could run this from our building down to the street so we could match up?
Absolutely. No, we would be able to work with you so that you could stage those out, and
Yeah.
basically as we get them extended across, we'd make that connection next spring if that schedule worked for you.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of, we can go either
That's the
way.
only thing that was kind of, when we read about this, is to find out if we could do that ahead of time, so we didn't have to wait in case things went till next
No,
summer.
yeah, I mean, if you didn't need occupancy till then, I think we could absolutely make that work.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, that public hearing is closed, and I would put it to the city council for a motion at this time.
I've got a question.
Oh, go ahead, I'm
Okay,
sorry. You gotta speak up.
okay, were notices sent to the people on Broadway about this here? Because you mentioned the cul-de-sac, and that's a big concern. And I know if you would have sent that to Broadway, you would have had this room filled tonight.
Right. No, I think the answer is no, we didn't notice Broadway, and frankly, I think if it's something that the council wants to consider, we would probably have to hold a special meeting or a separate meeting and hearing for that. My point of bringing it up tonight was just that, to bring it up, that it's something we should consider.
Okay.
So I'd like to know
It's
if
just
there's
consider
consideration.
It's not in the final plan.
No, no, direction would be good on that, I guess, if there's interest to proceed or just leave it alone, so.
Because that cul-de-sac is right across the street from the industrial park, so the concern would be heavier traffic from the industrial park and so forth, so. And this has come up before for that neighborhood, so.
So why don't we, Ron, why don't we put it on the Public Works agenda for, that probably, the work wouldn't probably be done till next year, right?
No, I don't
So
think
can
we
put
would
it on
do
the
that
Public
until
Works
next year.
Agenda coming up here in the next few months,
Correct.
okay? Any other questions then?
I have a question. When, John, you talked about needing to treat the stormwater at the Becker County Food Pantry site. What exactly? I mean, I know that this isn't
Yep,
with the project, but what do you think is gonna be required?
know which spot is good anymore. So the food pantry will trigger for sure a requirement under the Pelican River Watershed District because they'll be constructing a parking lot as part of their project, and that's one of the triggers for the watershed district for stormwater treatment. That they would at least have to comply with treatment requirements for this, the watershed. Whether or not they trigger the requirements for the city's land disturbance permit, which is related to stormwater treatment as well, would depend on the final size of the building and parking lot and things like that. But either way, they have ample room at that site to build a treatment basin, a pond, yes, a pond.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the council? I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution ordering the preparation of plans and specs for the street utility improvements for Terry Street and the Andrew development, correct?
Correct, and this would be conditioned on execution of a development agreement with the developer.
And that's part of your motions, right?
Correct.
Okay. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Thank you for attending. So without objection from the council, we got a couple items on the Public Works Committee agenda. And I think at this time we should take item 6A, Madeline.
This is an update on the Public Works Facility Project. Deb Brandwick from Ortel is going to be here, and she's going to bring us up to date on the new proposed Public Works bill.
Hello, Deb.
Hello. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here today. I think you can see on your screens the most up-to-date site plan that we have for the project. Where we're at, I believe we have a site plan, floor plan, worked out with the Public Works Department. We're through schematic design. We have kicked off mechanical, electrical, civil engineering 2 weeks ago. So we are somewhat full speed ahead unless somebody tells us to dial it back. The site plan that you see there, what is in color is pretty much your portion of the project. What you're seeing to the west half plus of the site is the County Highway Department project, which is under construction right now. There are proposed 3 drive entries off of North Tower Road. I believe the agreement would be that the city and county can use all 3 of them, but the city would essentially use that center and the one to the east mainly. And then what is kind of hatched in the black, gray would be the amount of paving we're showing for your project. And of course, the color blocks are the building itself, with the blue being the vehicle storage box, the orange being the vehicle maintenance and wash bay, and the green being the office area, with the office being towards the street to provide a welcome to any community members who need to come to the site. On that east drive, we would have a monument sign indicating that that is where visitors should enter, hoping within the drive patterns of the Public Works that we can somewhat keep passenger vehicles and the larger Public Works vehicles segregated. On the upper left of the screen there, it's a little hard to tell, but there's a fuel island that is being constructed as part of the county project that, barring future agreements being made, that would be shared between the city and council if those agreements come to fruition. And then going back to the kind of the east of the site, there would be parking for employees and guests. And then there are two little drives to the east, which aren't clearly shown on here, but to the utility site that is just to the east of this site. There's currently some class 5 drive lane there that we'll work with to maintain that access and kind of work in coordination with the neighbor to make sure that all flows at the end. To the very north, right just in the boulevard area, there's requirements that cover this parcel, requirements for a large amount of trees along the road to block visuals to the residential properties to the north that we, of course, will be following. And then further to the south, there's a large class 5 pad that is graded under what was the combined mass grading project between the city and the county. That project I think they're still finishing up a few items. I think they were out there. I just stopped by previous to this. It looked like they were just doing some temp seeding for the grading work that had been completed. But then you can see some kind of dashed lines there for a future cold storage building and some exterior material bin storage. As if you kind of dial into the floor plan, you can see that the vehicle storage area will be full with what is shown in there is existing equipment owned by the Public Works Department, and it will be full. So in the future, we will have it set up to fill in that corner that's currently notched out of vehicle storage or to build that cold storage building further south on the site. And then can we click to the renderings? I don't have a clicker. There we go. There were some comments made a while back that the City Hall is due for a facelift, and that project is in design, and that if we could be sympathetic in materials to provide a cohesive city look. So that is what our goal was for the exterior of your building. So we looked at a dark gray metal panel with some wood look metal panel infill that are in the same tones as the renderings we were showed for your City Hall facelift. For City Hall is showing some level of stonework, but with that we would tinted gray, not plain gray, tinted gray base, and then the precast panels on the major portions of the vehicle areas. And if you want to click one more, maybe, that's the overview looking from Tower Road with that office area in the front. The maintenance portion is the taller rectangle poking up that would be roughly a 30-foot max height to parapet. The vehicle storage portion being approximately 26 feet, and then the office area up front. I believe you were updated a while back on our cost estimate that had the hard construction costs themselves just under the $10 million figure. And that was if constructed at that time, which I believe was early May. We were hoping that the construction increases were going to temper through the year. What we're seeing, the initial numbers for Q2 is that they were again up in the between 2.5% to 3%. Haven't had final figures on that yet, but we will keep Kelsey updated on where we think that is headed. We did have some escalation monies shown in that overall cost estimate, but we will need to keep our eye on that as we move forward. Our goal is to have this out for bid in November. Bids due in December, not hard dates yet, but in the relative scheme of things, that is our plan. One last thing, with the budget, always being an issue. We had on the back side of the building, where that notch out was in the vehicle storage area, potentially a kind of a lean-to covered storage coming off of the side of the building that would be bid as an alternate. That is likely in the range of $225,000 maybe for that alternate. And as we get closer, depending on how construction costs are trending and what the comfort level is with the council, we can look at additional alternates to make sure that when we get numbers in, you have a project that you can approve in some manner.
So Deb, if we award the bid in November, when would the construction start? In the spring, or would they try to start in as early as November?
No, it would be start in spring, but the idea to get it bid in December would be to order materials, because as much as things are getting better, there's still long lead times on a number of materials, and precast is always roughly 3 months out, and now it had been up to 12 months, now it's back to about 5. But yes, the goal would be to be able to get precast in the ground as soon as spring comes.
Are you to the question phase now?
Yes, please.
Any questions from the council? If not, Deb, thank you for the update this evening. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me here, appreciate it.
Thank you.
So let's do 6B, Madeline.
6B, consideration to the parking lot design for the Flyers Gymnastics. Public Works spent a lot of time on this yesterday afternoon. John had prepared some options for parking lot design that you probably have seen that were in your packet. I guess what we've determined through our discussion at Public Works yesterday is that this is probably not really a question so much of parking lot design at this point. It's more a question of, do we want the Flyers to go ahead and be able to do their building? As you know, the building is on city property. It requires the council to grant them permission to do the expansion that they wish to do. We had a lot of discussion about it yesterday. The Public Works Committee was split on it 3-1. I don't know how you want to proceed with this as far as the question before the Public Works actually was, do we make them wait while the RDG group does their community meetings and attempts to come back to us with some overall plan for the area that we've requested, from the pavilion all the way down to Westlake Drive at this spot? I mean, that in essence is the basic question here. Do we wait, or can we allow them to go ahead? And I think the people at the Public Works Committee, 3 of us were in favor of allowing them to go, with the understanding that RDG would know that that building is there, it's not going to move out of that area, and to use that in their deliberations and their discussions. That's the bottom line of what we discussed yesterday. The parking lot at this point, what John has developed for us is way more than the Flyers Gymnastics needs, even for the city's requirements. He's got parking lots there that range from 130 parking spots to about 160 parking spots. The city has required that they have, or does require that they have roughly 88 spots. The other thorn, of course, is that before we can grant them permission to do this, we really need to know, how do we pay for the parking lot? That's sort of been where we've been with the Boys and Girls Club, where we've been with the museum, when other entities have wanted to expand on city property. Lisa, who represents Minnesota Flyers, was asked yesterday, after Heidi presented the financials to us, and the bottom line of the financials is that we have not got money in even food and beverage tax, which is supposed to pay for parking lots. We don't have that money in there. At this point, it's overextended. She was asked, would they be willing to raise money for the parking lot? Her response was yes, she thought they could raise money for the parking lot. So here we are at this point. We need to make a decision. Do we allow them to go forward? How do we pay for the parking lot? Do they pay for the parking lot? Therefore, that's the discussion. Here we are. Everybody can discuss.
I got a question. So you guys can raise the money for the parking lot?
I mean, as of right now, we have we're looking at raising funds for our expansion. Now, with our current building, the city only gives us 25 parking spots at our current space. So I think the numbers are a little skewed for just our expansion, right? We're doubling our space, but we go from 25 parking spots, but now we need 88. You guys have drawings are from, Madeline said 100 to 160. That's not for our facility, that parking. That's for everything else in the community and for the arena or the fair. So I think that number is a little unfair and unjust, that's not what our parking lot, that's not just for us.
How many parking spots do you think you need?
What we currently have,
How many do you think you need with your expansion? Like, what's the total? Like, I see some parking issues in this town where there's way too many parking spots that never get used, so I can see your point. How many do you think you need?
35 to 45.
What's the requirement?
But the true answer here is not how much they need, but how much our parking ordinance requires buildings to have.
Can't we make an exceptions on ordinances? Like, are we going by a golden rule that you gotta have so many can't we do a variance on it? You know, people do variances all the time on the lake with the Pelican watershed. Why can't they do a variance on parking spots? You know, I can see their point. Why should they pay for 90 spots if they only need 50? And if they can raise their own money themselves, I'm all for this project. I just don't want, I think it's to a point where we're paying for people's parking lots in the city, and how many businesses are we paying for their parking lots? These guys are willing to raise their own money for a parking lot, and if they need more or less parking spots than we're requiring, let's make a variance on it and let's do it.
Again, we have 25 right now. So, why does it go from 25 that I'm guessing that's what we're supposed to have, because that's all that we have lines for, and we're doubling our space. Why does it go from 25 to 88? Why wouldn't it double? Why wouldn't it go to 50? Or tripling and then some? So where does that come? Why is there so many more?
Well, we have to have Larry or Kelsey answer those questions.
The short answer is that when they were allowed to build there wasn't an analysis done of the parking requirements. It was just that there was a bunch of shared parking in that area. And so they don't have any dedicated parking spaces down there at all. They have actually zero parking, if you look at it from the city's perspective. But the requirement would have been more than 25.
Okay, Kelsey.
Mayor and council, I think the only thing I'd add is the current agreement, when, in 2000, when the gymnastics building was built, one of the considerations, part of the way the deal was crafted, was Flyers Gymnastics basically constructed the building at their cost, maintain it at their cost going forward. Trade-off was the parking and the driveways were to be city-owned and maintained. That's what's in the current agreement. So I guess there's two questions here, because really ultimately the vehicle to move this thing forward, as I mentioned at Public Works facility, is for Charlie and I to draft some sort of amendment to the existing management agreement for the new expansion, right? So there's a couple ways that can be. If someone else is gonna pay for the parking lot, we can craft that into the parking lot for whatever number of parking spaces it is. Or if it's gonna be the way the old agreement was, the city was on the hook for the parking lot and driveways, which then, even if it's 88 parking spots and not 130, you're still looking at a price tag of somewhere under $1 million for the parking lot. So really the conversation that we talked about is the council want to direct staff, we can put that agreement together for next month for action. Do you want to wait to see what happens with this RDG study? Just looking for some direction from the council on which direction you want us to go.
I would like to add to this too, because I think that the parking lot is gonna benefit the arena more than it benefits the Flyers gymnastics site. And yes, I know that the RDG study is being done, but I don't think that we should hold up the Minnesota Flyers from their fundraising and expansion based on, we know that this parking lot is going to be done and it will be as part of the RDG study. But that RDG study could take, you know, quite a few months, and if it doesn't start till August or September, and then they have to have all the meetings, I think my preference is that we allow MFG to go ahead with their expansion, and the parking lot will be a focus of the RDG study, the pavilion, all the way down Westlake Drive, back to the arena and the Flyers.
Ron?
Okay, I was the one that objected yesterday, and the reason is, for the past 40 years, the city's been wondering what would happen if someday we could redo the fairgrounds in the current ice arena. Well, we're gonna have that opportunity here, coming here next month. We've hired a firm, RDG, out of Omaha. We're gonna pay them $75,000 to an assessment of that whole area down there. And my only thing that I have to say about this parking lot, we're gonna bring this company up now, and they're gonna have to work their plans around the parking lot, because we've agreed to go ahead and tell them we can go ahead and build the parking lot. I think we should put this on hold until we can see what their suggestions are from RDG, and see what the total plans down there for the ice arena, for whatever may be going on down there, because whatever goes down there is gonna take a lot of money, and we've had a committee work on this, but there's nobody here except for maybe one or two people from the council that have any idea what's happening down there with this plan. What is the overall plan? Like I said, we've been thinking about this for 40 years. What could happen if this could ever happen? Well, we're at the stage, maybe something could happen, and we shouldn't do a thing, I don't think, until we get this worked out with RDG. What is the overall plan to see what can happen? And even you, ma'am, you said that you maybe thought that maybe you could even maybe move to a different site, because you're talking about $3.5 million for a new addition, and then you were talking $1 million for a parking lot. Well, you even mentioned maybe you should go to a different site. I don't know what that would mean or what that would look like, but I'm saying at least let's have RDG come in here. We're only talking less than 6 weeks away that they're gonna be here. Have public hearings where we have people come and put in their input for everybody in Detroit Lakes, not just one group, and just see what can happen in that area for the future, because this isn't just for today and the next 10 years. This is gonna be a 50 to 75 year project. So I'm just saying, let's hold off until RDG comes in and does their work, and then we can put this together and see really what is better for this. But the other thing I have to say about the food and beverage tax, when people voted on this, we voted for water quality, worked at trails, and we worked the parking lots. Well, I've got to say, so far, the majority of the money has probably gone to parking lots and upkeep of those parking lots. The people have been waiting for bike trails, have been waiting a long time. We've got a lot of trails that we told people we were gonna build and they voted for it, and they've seen very little off those trails. So we got a group of people who are saying, hey, when's this money gonna kick in for trails? You know, that's the question we have here, and like we said, right now, we're down to $127,000 in that food and beverage tax, and we've got a lot of people after that money, but I just think we've gotta get the full focus on this thing. And we've got a chance now that we've been waiting on for 40 years. Let's have RDG come in, let's do this, see what they've got to put in on this and their suggestions, then we can make a plan what's the best thing to do down there in the old fairgrounds, the ice arena. That's what I like to see happen.
So Madeline, you had 3 of your committee in favor of
Right.
allowing them to move forward.
Yes.
I would suggest you make a motion to allow them to move forward, based on the 3-to-1.
We can make a motion and then we can have questions. As soon as we shut up.
I apologize.
There we go.
Can I just say one thing real quick? You know how I gotta save my output, but on this RDG thing, okay, we're spending 75 grand with a study with a company in Iowa. We have local people here in the community that have common sense, and they're asking for a variance for a smaller parking lot, which makes common sense. Let them raise the money, okay? These guys aren't coming here asking for money. They're asking for our permission to raise the money. So I'm all for raising the money. Let's look at doing a variance. I don't think we need that many parking spots either. We're spending 75 grand with a company out of Iowa, which I was totally against in the first place. Let them do their fundraising. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Okay,
Every
so
10 weeks, every 10 weeks it takes, I turn away average of 40 kids and youth in our community saying, sorry, I don't have room for you. Every 10 weeks, that's 40 kids.
I think we should get a motion.
Could we get a motion
Yes.
first, though?
Yeah.
Then everybody can have their say, but you gotta have a motion on the
Madeline,
floor.
will you make a motion, please?
So I move that we direct Kelsey and our county, or our city attorney to draft an addendum to their management contract to allow them to expand. Do we need more in there than that? I'm looking at Charlie.
Mayor and council, the reason why I pause is, are you committing the council to the parking lot costs now, or do you want to take that up next month? We can draft the agreement for next month, or do you want to make a decision to, you gonna handle that parking lot issue now?
And are they gonna pay for the parking lot then? Is that what we're hearing?
Well, that's kind of what I'm asking, because that's how we'll draft the agreement.
So I have a question about that.
Just one moment, please. Were you done, Kelsey?
I'm done.
Okay, go ahead.
If we're gonna fundraise for the parking lot, cause it's such a shared space there, is, you know, kind of what gave me pause. I don't feel like it's fair to tax a nonprofit organization to pay for parking. If we have to, we will, when we're determined to make this happen. But then Minnesota Flyer, like, how would that work? Because then that's our parking. And yet it's such a shared space between, you know, with everything that goes on in that area. I just don't know. And then also my other question is, the food pantry building staying, or would that?
No, that's.
No, it's,
Okay, so that would be additional potential parking.
Right. So Kelsey, is there a scenario where you could, and Charlie could draft an agreement that had a couple of different options to address the parking? That we could look at next month and that the flyers could look at, and we could maybe come to an agreement as to if they're gonna pay something, how much is it gonna be, and how many spots are we gonna require?
well, yeah, and my question is, if they weren't required to have spots to begin with, and we assumed that they were using the shared spots from the arena, does that, can we go forward with that same type of understanding? I mean, is this something that we need, can that be worked out when with this contract? I mean, how do we approach that?
A couple of us have questions, Your Honor.
The problem is the additional building space takes up what would have been parking space.
Well, I can't imagine,
Parking is an issue down there.
I can't imagine we're gonna tell them they can't add on to that building. It'd be just throwing money away. It'd be ridiculous. We need to let them move forward with their fundraising, help these kids out that they're turning away, and we gotta figure out how to do it, so. But anyway, Dan, go ahead.
Well, it's just on the parking issue, you know, it's city property, so it's gonna be a city parking lot. So, I mean, at some point, it's gonna need to be paved, and just to point it out, you don't really need a variance for this because the city doesn't necessarily give itself a variance. We just say we're gonna pave so many spots. Now, having said that, we don't have money to pave all the spots that we need, so what I would recommend we do is ask the Flyers to provide enough money to pay for the 35, 40 spots that they need at this point, and at some point in the future, we're gonna have to bite the bullet and pave the rest of that anyway, because it is shared space, and, you know, the rest of the facility there is going to be using it. So that's the direction I would go.
Was there more questions?
I've got a
I'm
question.
sorry, go ahead, Wendy.
Dan's kind of asked it, but my question was, so to this point, there has been no requirement of 88 spaces or 40 spaces or 50 spaces. It's just functioned as is. And when the new addition is done, it's gonna be using some of that space, I imagine, where parking already exists. It won't be using any of it?
No, there is
It's a
not.
With the
different
drawing,
direction.
it doesn't cut into any of the current parking space
Okay.
that we have.
Okay, so my question is maybe to Kelsey. So if they build, are we required to put in a parking lot?
Well,
If I can sing that a little bit.
No, they can park in the gravel.
I mean, this, I guess, I'm
Mayor,
talking about the immediacy of, is this a future potential project like Dan is stating, and if they can have their parking spaces that they can fund, and then we can work on parking, put it on our 5-year capital, whatever, however we do that to prepare for it versus trying to use a fund that's been overextended already.
I'd just like to add on here at this point, Your Honor, I think we need to look at that more like the city parking lot for the mall or the city parking lot for the area behind Price's Jewelry and all that area. This is a campus parking lot, not a Flyers parking lot, but again, they need some parking and we can't afford to put it in, all of it right now, so ask for a contribution, so, okay.
Further questions or comments?
I've got a question, because I'm just lost here, because are we talking about parking, we're talking about 88 spots, we're talking about 40 spots, we're talking about expansion, we're talking about fundraising, and it's just, I wasn't at the meeting yesterday because I'm not on that committee, so sorry, but where are we going? Are we just asking for the point of Kelsey and Charlie sitting down and writing up a draft policy or plan or agreement for us to come back and discuss what the nuts and bolts are? Or are we talking about giving them full-blown jurisdiction to put in an addition with limited or no parking lot? Or are we hampering other city councils in the future for putting in a new parking lot, maintaining that? If somebody could just bring me up to speed a little bit on, are we just talking about an agreement to have a conversation next week?
Gosh, you could have been at the meeting yesterday, because this is sort of exactly the same merry-go-round we were on yesterday.
well,
But Kelsey sort of had a good explanation of why he thinks it should be going, we should do the contract and the whole thing. To allow.
what was my great explanation?
Well,
Again,
it makes more
typically
sense.
any project, I mean, we keep talking about, well, any project that we do in town has a parking component. We don't approve any project and then say, oh gosh, what are you gonna do with parking? I mean, there isn't a project that we don't approve in town that has a parking plan. So I'm trying to get kind of the horses back in front of the cart and say, well, what's the parking plan? What I'm hearing, and here's my suggestion, is we'll draft an amendment or a new management agreement, whatever Charlie sees fit. And the stipulation we'll probably put in the draft agreement is that the city is going to put in the parking lot. And we're gonna maintain the parking lot. But realize, as a council, if you approve that next month, you are making a future commitment to do the parking. And I don't have the answer for how we're gonna pay for that parking lot, but it's gonna be a future commitment for this council and future councils to figure out how to pay for that parking lot and put in the parking lot.
But we could ask them to pay, for something.
You certainly could, and I think,
Dollar amount, we don't have to even talk about how many spots there are.
I would create that as a base agreement, and if you want to put a dollar amount in, so be it.
I like that idea.
You just put me off course now with your comment about we don't even have to care about the number, except we do, because we've made decisions in the past that says this size business requires this many parking spots, placing that responsibility on us as a city council, or as a city administration to do that parking
I
lot,
think
correct?
this is a whole different
So
thing
it doesn't
down
just
there.
go
It's a-
away.
Wendy, it's a community parking lot, so to speak, with different, the arena using it, the fair may be using it. I mean, it's not the same as a regular deal.
No, I get that, but just the statement was, we do have that responsibility to follow our own rules. At some point, correct?
At some point, yes.
I mean, it might not be this
I mean,
year or
that's
next
part of
spring,
it.
but it is committing us to a future project. If we're gonna set rules, we need to probably follow them.
Okay,
Call me crazy.
you know, the concern I have, right now, we've got a lot of building projects going on Detroit Lakes, and it all comes down to funding. And, our money for, the food and beverage, we don't have the money to go ahead, because we're gonna do it, we're talking $1.5 to $2 million for the parking lot. But we also have Public Works building, we're remodeling this building, we've got many street projects. We've hired RDG to come in, we've already committed $75,000. I'm just saying to hold off on this thing, because right now, we've been talking about this for 40 years, what to do that fairgrounds. We put in this parking lot and tell them to go ahead. It just ties the hands of RDG that's coming in. But right now, let's talk about money. Right now, with the Public Work building, we're gonna have to pay for that with what we've got in there. We're gonna have close to $52 million in bonding funds to pay back. That's a lot of money for a town our size. That's $5,000 for every man, woman, and child that live here. And we keep wanna spending more and more money. Where's this money gonna keep going? And, I'm just saying that somebody better tap the brakes a little bit here, cause I just keep hearing spending money. Where's the funnel where it's gonna bring money to pay for all this? And it's just, I just think we've just gotta wait until this RDG comes in, get the total plan. They're gonna be talking about pavilion. I mean, there's so many things going on here that all takes money. I think until we get everything worked out, we shouldn't be doing anything else until we get this thing all figured out. I just think we should hold off on this thing. It doesn't make sense. We're only talking 6 weeks. We're not talking 6 months.
Well, no, that's not right, Ron, because they're gonna come here in 6 weeks. They're gonna do a lot of meetings. It's gonna take months.
But that's my point though, Mayor. We've hired them to come in and tell us what to do with that property, and we're already doing it. And then, how are we gonna pay for this? And you say we're gonna do a local option sales tax.
I don't wanna
We got a
argue
bunch
with you,
of
Ron.
people over
All
there.
I'm saying, it's gonna take a long time. And what we do is we tell RDG, this building is now gonna be this big instead of this big.
I'll take 10 grand off the quote too.
So, I wanna take this gentleman first.
So I have two comments. One, the parking situation. When thinking about different businesses and how the parking's impacted and things like that, the business model kind of impacts that. We look at a school across the street, right? It services hundreds of children every day, and look at the number of parking that it has. Look at the community center, which has a rapid changeover. I'd like to challenge how many parking spaces are there for their facility size and the addition that's going on there, and how does that meet the needs with kind of the expectations of our parking? Again, the amount of people that are impacted on an hourly basis, and that changeover impacts our parking needs. And second, I've heard a lot with this RDG. Do we expect that the RDG is gonna come back and say, hey, Minnesota Flyers needs to leave this facility?
No,
So that's to meet our needs and to move forward,
That's
that's
not even-
part of that expectation.
that's not even realistic, so. We had more comments. At some point, we're gonna have to vote too, you know, don't forget that.
We don't even have a
I'll keep this
second.
short.
We don't have a second? Can we please have a
Second.
second? All right, thank you.
I look at this Ron, your point is very well taken of waiting for the RDG study. And I think looking at this is a holistic approach. To me, that's where the parking goes. The last thing I want is to have flyers put money down and say, now stand outside and protect all 22 spots when you've got MMA fights going on, or the fair going on. This is a communal project that, when you look at this, for them to do it, they could be coming to us and say, hey, we want the city to partner with us. We want you to kick in 2.5 million. They're willing to fundraise on their own and get the building done. I think that's a heck of a step up by that group to get that project done for the community. Two, I think that, and Ron, I think somebody mentioned it yesterday, I don't know who, but maybe this is the half-cent sales tax that look at this whole project and roll the parking into that. You know, I think that's where we go with this. But yet, if they're willing to raise the money and funds, let's get them the building they want and get going, so they don't come back and ask us to help partner with them. And then let's step back and look at this for the RDG study, and I realistically think this whole project is probably going a half-cent sales tax, or local option sales tax, if and when that time comes.
Natalie, you have something?
He said what I was thinking.
That parking lot's all beat up anyways. I've already been in there. This is a non-issue. Let them raise the money and let's move on. Let's vote.
I can't imagine there's much more that could be said about this tonight.
Well, you can't keep taxing people with money we haven't got.
Ron,
that
they're
is
stating
not-
that they're gonna raise the money. Okay?
Is that part of the motion?
I'm gonna hold that to them. They're gonna raise
Is
the
that
money.
part of this
So
motion?
how about if I recognize people before they talk?
I'm sorry.
All right,
Can I say something?
I guess.
They're gonna raise the money. Right? Or you try to raise the money?
For the parking lot?
Yeah.
Yes, we're raising money for our building.
And how about the parking lot then? What are they raising? I mean, that's where my question comes
I
in.
think we are willing to discuss that, or we are open to contributing to part of the parking lot cost if that were to come up.
I
For the
think,
amount that we need.
I think at this point, we've given the city administrator and the city attorney enough to come up with a draft with some options for maybe having you folks pay some money towards the greater project of parking down in the whole site. And so, I don't know how I've completely lost control here, but I'm gonna call the question. And the motion is, so I'm gonna call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Can I,
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries.
I was gonna ask for clarity of what the motion landed on, because I'm not prepared to vote again on something that went around and around, and I can't even remember what the initial motion is.
The motion
So
was
if
to
you'd
direct,
restate it, then I could vote.
the motion was to direct the city attorney and the city administrator to draft a management agreement.
It'd be an amendment to the existing management agreement.
And it would also have some scenarios for the council to make a decision on how much we may ask the flyers to contribute towards the parking. Is that
I think
okay
that
with your
was it.
motion and second?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
that was it.
Aye.
thank you for coming, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing all you're doing for all the kids, it's good stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, we have item 6K, Madeline.
On to 6K. Mr. Omenbach, yes. Consideration to a special event application for the Teamsters Local 320 to have a barbecue held on August 23rd near Lake Avenue and Holmes Street.
Mayor and council, maybe I'll just jump in here. You see the request for basically part of the sidewalk and the parking area on Lake Avenue in front of the county courthouse. Pat is here, I'm certainly let him speak if needed, but I think the concern was raised about that location, about it impeding pedestrian traffic, impeding traffic, and also taking away the parking spaces that are there. They're often busy in front of the courthouse. So one suggestion that maybe I'd throw out there is basically approve a special event permit for the parking lot that is kitty corner from the courthouse They basically can rope off an area or whatever is needed there. Understand it has an implication to parking, but it wouldn't be right on the street. So that's one suggestion, but there, Mayor, I'd maybe leave it to Pat if he had anything to add.
Pat, anything to add?
No, may I first, Mayor?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Pat Olme. If you didn't know, I am the county administrator with Becker County. And I only learned about this because I do look at your agendas and minutes, and it popped up in the consent agenda. So I had put a late call into the city administrator in email, but it was understandably he wasn't able to get back to me because it was later in the afternoon. So I chose to show up and speak to him one-on-one. Certainly in my capacity as the county administrator, I also operate as the safety coordinator for the county as well. And I spoke to the board chair, and he thought it would be a good idea to approach the city council, talk a little bit about this. If you ever come down to the county board area there, both sides of parking on Lake Street and Home Street are always filled with customers. We actively promote our employees to park in our designated parking areas, but certainly they allow to drop things off from a shipping receiving standpoint. We're very busy. The section in question starts where I think it's a lot longer than they anticipated to draw, but it certainly juts out into the road, which concerned me, even though the writing said nothing was going to be closed from a road purpose. But it does extend at least a fourth of the parking on that, or half of the parking on that one side, and the fourth of the parking on both sides of Lake Street. A lot of people park there, certainly a lot of people with spouses, with walkers. So they can let them out on the passenger side and get on the sidewalk and go into the county and get goods and services. I know there's going to be barricades. I was a little concerned about that affecting ADA issues for people walking on the sidewalk, both with wheelchairs and walkers. And really what is being asked is there's going to be a barbecue event on the sidewalk. The sidewalk is certainly wide enough for ADA issues, but it gets limited when you start having, and I'm just gonna guess here because it's not in the application, heated, cookers or something like that. And so we're concerned about the safety, we're concerned about the traffic and the lack of parking, we're concerned about our customers getting to us and getting to us safely. Certainly people do come from the other side of the courthouse, but that parking spot is much smaller. The Washington Mall is much bigger, and that's where most people park. The concept or the idea that the state administrator brought up, I think, is certainly worthy of your consideration, because the request is to provide, a food opportunity for, and I'm just guessing here because it doesn't say it. I think it's Teamsters employees. I don't know if it's all employees. I just don't know, because like I said, I just found this application and looking at it this afternoon, and no one's approached the county at all. But the parking lot certainly in the Washington Mall area is in the middle between Human Services and Courthouse, so proximity for people to walk to. But the real issue for us isn't the application or who the applicant is. It's where it's located, and it's the safety issue, it's the parking issue, it's the ADA issue. It was in the board. My county board has not weighed in on this. When I saw it, I inquired with my board chair, and we thought we should at least have a conversation with the city about our concerns. And then the final thing I'll leave with the mayor and the city council is, I know in the application it talks about that the city may require, they certainly have an indemnification clause for the city and for the departments and agencies, but let's keep in mind this is being marketed to some employees and at the county, whether it's Teamsters employees or all the employees, I'm not sure. But I think there is a liability issue here, and I think if the city was going to support something like this, I think I would want you to request that you consider requiring some type of insurance or liability insurance because of the concerns that I've outlined. And I'll just leave it at that, Mayor.
Thank you, Pat. Kelsey, did you say you had a suggestion?
Yeah, of going in the mall parking lot.
In that lower one, or?
Either or, I mean.
Lower one would be great.
Yeah.
Or is it full of stuff down there?
I think that's
Construction stuff.
I haven't driven by there lately, so I'm not sure, but, to me, either option would work in the mall parking lot, but, the other thing I just wanna point out, the event date is August 23rd. I'm sure they would like to know where they're going to be between now and then. Otherwise, you postpone any action till August council meeting, but.
Okay,
I just, I've got, like to Kelsey's point here, it is August 23rd, and there's kind of the elephant in the room here that there are issues over at the courthouse with employees and management, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. And if we're telling somebody they've got to move from their application, we don't do this in a typical fashion. We don't say, hey, you know what, you're going to do the parade, but it's going to be down Highway 10 or something. So I think we should move to table this, bring it back to the Teamsters, have them come up with a solution rather than us coming up with a solution in conjunction with the county, because this is their event, not our event, not their event. And I make a motion to table this and bring it back to the Teamsters.
I'll second that.
okay. Any further discussion or comments?
Mayor, may I just offer something very quickly?
Sure, Pat.
Certainly the counselor had mentioned about issues, between management and employees. This has nothing to do with that. You could put whatever applicant name you want on the agreement. It's still a safety issue, it's a parking issue, it's a customer services issue. I'm not coming to you to respond to any other things going on that people believe are happening with management and employees. This has to do with just that. And so you could put whatever applicant name you wanted. I would still be approaching you with the same concern about parking and customer efficiency and safety. And that's the reason I'm approaching you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further comments? Otherwise, we have a motion.
I've got a question.
Really?
Yeah. Well, is the Teamsters Local 320 union, is that the union for the county employees?
I'm sorry.
Is this Teamsters Local 320? Is Teamsters Local 320 the union for the employees over at Becker County?
We have 8 bargaining units at Becker County. There, 2 of them are Teamsters 320 Courthouse and
Okay.
Teamsters 320 Human Services.
Because I can kind of understand where Dan's coming from, because there are issues over there, and this is part of their union, and I don't think we should, I'll just leave it as that. We should stay out of it.
Well, that's the motion right now.
That's to table.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
The motion was to table until next month. And we're gonna reach out to the Teamsters Union and tell them we prefer a different location.
Yeah, they're the applicant. I think you should. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here, because the rest of the council got to meet you.
Right? Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thanks for coming.
No, and I'm glad to, and I'm welcome to come back anytime. If you invite me, I will be here. So, okay. Thank you.
Yep, so now I think we're back to the Community Development Committee agenda, Dan.
All right, item 5A is review of the Westlake Drive project schedule from RDG. We had some conversation yesterday. They kind of came out with a preliminary schedule, but staff is currently working on how to massage that, and we'll be seeing some more and community meetings in the coming 6 to 8 weeks or so, and that's all we've got. Unless Kelsey, you got anything?
No, Mayor and Council, again, the intent is to start in August. Larry and I have a conference call with them tomorrow and look for a more definitive schedule soon.
Thank you.
So no action on that item. Item B is consideration to a resolution approving a non-conforming use expansion permit to enlarge a non-conforming storage shed by 24 square feet and to raise the sidewall height from 8 feet to 9 feet and grant a variance to allow a 3-foot side yard setback at 517 North Shore Drive. Larry, you want to give us a little bit of information?
Well, I think that by reading the title, you've kind of given all of the information.
All right,
So-
perfect. Planning Commission reviewed this. They recommend approval. CDC recommends approval, and I so move.
And there is one thing I want to mention. In your resolution, it says a 16 by 26-foot storage shed. It's supposed to be 16 by 36. So with that correction, I would let your motion stand.
Okay, I will adjust my motion to the 36 feet.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item C is consideration to a resolution approving a variance to allow a 17-foot, 7-inch side yard setback instead of a 20-foot side yard setback on the corner lot of 807 Whitetail Lane. Larry, you want to talk about it, or should I? All right, perfect. So when they laid out the lines, they were off a little bit, so The corner of the house is encroaching by 16 or whatever so inches into the side yard setback. Planning Commission reviewed this, didn't see any issues with it. Last night, CDC reviewed it, didn't see any issues with it. So I recommend approving the resolution as read, and I so move.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the variance at 807 Whitetail Lane. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries with one nay.
Well, that was a yay, but I was late on it, so. It turned out a nay.
It was a nay, right?
No, it was a yay,
It
but
was
I
a
was
yay,
late
but
on
he
the
was
trigger.
too late.
Unanimously approved.
Sorry.
Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Item D is consideration to resolution approving the final plat of Long Pine Estates, 3rd edition. We reviewed it last night at the CDC meeting. We recommend approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the final plat of Long Pine Estates, 3rd edition. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We'll move to the public. Is that it, Dan?
That's it.
Sorry. We'll move to the Public Works Committee, and we've already taken care of A and B,
Yep.
Madeline.
Item C, consideration to a resolution authorizing eminent domain proceedings relating to multi-use trail improvements. Do we want to take a minute to talk about what's happening there or not?
No.
The mayor says no.
All right,
Good.
Charlie? I guess we're not.
it's Mr. Pratt's project, and we need some temporary easement and a very small amount of permanent easement. The landowner has not been communicating with Mr. Pratt, and so we are going to proceed along the lines of a taking.
Eminent domain.
Yes,
And I believe,
I'm not sure.
I believe it's in front of you
This is
in
back on
the
front
pile
there.
of
This
paper
is
you
in
got.
front of you.
The total amount of the authorized
Yeah,
damages
it's
are
down at the
prepared
bottom.
by our appraiser, and they're listed on the thing. It's a total of $8,500.
Okay, I apologize.
It's in front of you.
Okay.
Public Works had a discussion about this yesterday, and we moved to authorize eminent domain proceedings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the eminent domain proceedings for the multi-use trail improvements on the Westlake Drive Phase 2. Correct, John? Discussion?
The only reason we waited for discussion, like, is we didn't have the dollar amount for what it was gonna take, so.
We have that
And
now.
that we have that, yes.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item D, consideration to a resolution accepting a report and setting a public hearing on the abatement of diseased trees for 2022. That list is in front of you also in the pile of papers. Public Works reviewed this yesterday. We accept the report, move to accept the report and set a public hearing for next council meeting.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the disease tree report and set the public hearing for the August council meeting. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item E, acceptance of the city engineer's monthly project status report. If you'd like to hear, we'll call on John and he can briefly go through
I like that.
the monthly project status report.
I feel like I should be offended. Mayor and council. Plenty of stuff going on here with projects. This thing is just not safe. We'll try that. Westlake Drive Phase 1, we are making progress. If you recall, we awarded that project at the end of June. We're waiting for MnDOT to give us final authorization and clearances. We've received those. We're executing contracts. So that project will be moving ahead here fairly soon. I would expect that we'll start actually on that project probably right after WeFest, early August. Contractors indicating at this point that it's going to take that long to get some of the materials on site to be able to start that work. So once that starts, it will take the rest of the construction season and probably spill into next year just a little bit. So we are moving ahead with that. I would point out there is a separate but related project that Public Utilities is working on replacing all the overhead power transmission through there and putting that underground along with some private utility companies. And that project will probably start just maybe a little bit earlier, maybe by the end of July. I don't know if you have any indication on that yet.
Not yet.
Okay, so end of July, early August, probably in that time frame. Westlake Drive Phase 2, that's been awarded to Haug. They've actually started construction in earnest here yesterday and today. I'd point out that we actually did start the detours for that. Sort of a broader PSA here is there's just going to be a lot of road closures in that area as we move from now until the end of the construction season. Don't bank on being able to get through Westlake Drive, pretty much from Legion all the way to the Pelican River. There'll be a detour set up, pushing folks down Rossman and Willow, 59, all the way out to the golf course and back. It's a long detour, but there's no other way through there, and we really need people to be abiding by that, because it's going to be congested working through that corridor, and we don't need extra traffic through there. We just need to try to get people in and out. So, yes, sir.
Question, with that, is Highway 6 closed so you can't even get down to 6 and out to 59 that way?
As it stands right now, it is still open to County Road 6,
Okay,
out 6 to the highway.
okay,
That will be fairly short-lived. As soon as we get a permit from the railroad, the contractor intends to start that work on County Road 6 like the next day.
gotcha,
So
thank you,
you're good for now, but buyer beware.
thank you.
Berquist subdivision, that project's basically wrapped up. We'll be working on final payment, probably getting that to the council in the next month or two. The Bristlin subdivision, nothing to report. Willow Homes and Frazee, lots of work on that project over the last month. Frazee Street, of course, is pretty well done and open, same with the alley. Willow from Rossman out to 59 is done and complete. So the majority of the work right now is on Willow Street from Rossman to Washington. Underground is all done. They're working on grading. We should be looking at putting Class 5 down and starting concrete work here in the next week or so. That's going to take probably 3 weeks to a month to get that project finished up. And then also Home Street is under construction. Underground utilities are done. They're going to work on grading and getting curb and gutter put back in there. That one will probably wrap up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So plenty happening there. Lake Forest also wrapped up. Be working on final payment for that. Highland Drive, the plans, specs, all of that are done. They've been issued to the county. The county's taking the lead on that project. They're advertising for bids right now, opening them early August. That'll probably set up for a fall or late summer construction project on Highland Drive. Coincidentally, the county is going to have a public input or informational meeting here at City Hall August 19th, I think it's, or July 19th, a week from today, at City Hall at 5 p.m. if anybody's interested in coming to that. Long Pine Estates Phase 3, nothing to report. That project probably won't get underway until early September. The Becker County Museum parking lot project, that's been delayed, waiting for the museum to be able to vacate their building, do their asbestos abatement. That's all underway now. I expect maybe we'll start work on that parking lot, or phases or portions of that parking lot sometime in the next week or two. Campbell and Linden, that's design work for construction next year. Same with Summit Avenue. And then we covered the Dandrew subdivision already, so.
Questions for John?
Public Works moves to accept his status report.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the city engineer's monthly project status report. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We'll move to the Finance Committee agenda. Chairman Zeman.
Okay, item 7A, consideration to the purchase of a service agreement with the Detroit Lakes Tourism Bureau and the Detroit Lakes Regional Chamber of Commerce. Under the cost of services for this amount is $64,050 for the coming year. It's a 5% increase over what they were paid last year. As you know, the lodging tax in Detroit Lakes is 3%. That's where this money's coming from. So the committee recommends that we approve this, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the purchase of services contract with the Detroit Lakes Tourism Bureau, Detroit Lakes Regional Chamber of Commerce. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And Ron, you have one other item.
Okay, we have one other item here. This is the State of Minnesota State Airport Funds Grant Agreement. Kelsey, you wanna kinda give us a quick update on this?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this is a project that you probably heard me talk about before. This is for the new fueling station out at the airport. So the grant agreement that's before you is just the design portion of that grant. It's a 70-30 split, and then I would expect after we get bids in, we would get a construction grant also from MnDOT for the fueling station, but this is just for the design.
The committee recommends, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the airport grant for the design of the new fueling station. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, I've got one other thing in front of you. Kelsey and I were at the League of Minnesota Cities conference in Duluth here, and I put together, I went to a session, it involves property tax, glossary of terms. It just tells about the different things that's happening in local property tax. And as you know, one of the main fund money to help pay expenses and costs and stuff is through, public market as far as property taxes, and that gives you an update on it. And I also brought back a pen for you for the League of Minnesota Cities. And I'm doing this because I'm hoping that next year when we have these conferences, I think it's very important that we all get involved and find out what other cities are doing, and there's lots of great information. They had a record turnout, 750 people were there. Just about every city in Minnesota was represented, but it's just a good way to find out what other communities are doing, but it's also a great resource for what's happening around the state. And the three things that stood out in every city in Minnesota, the three things that everybody needs is a workforce, because everybody's looking for jobs. In Minnesota, we only have one person coming in to the workplace for 3 people that are retiring now, so we need workforce. We need workforce housing for people to afford wherever they work, be able to buy a house with that job. And the big thing is daycare keeps popping up, so I just wanted to pass that along.
Common theme.
Common thing, yeah, Bill, Your Honor.
Yep, thank you. The Public Safety Committee, Dan?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have something kind of big tonight. We've been discussing purchasing body cameras for our police force, and we have a proposal tonight to do that. The chief has put together bids on it. It's a prudent thing to do to purchase those body cameras. The chief's been recommending this for a couple months, so we're recommending that we purchase the G-Tech product. That is the most cost-effective. It does everything that we need it to do. It's compatible with our current equipment in the cars, and we can add on to it as needed. With that, I'd like to ask Chief Todd to describe what we're trying to do here in a little more detail than that.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Chief?
I don't know, how much detail would you like me to go in, Mr. Wenner?
Talk about the necessity for the cameras
Sure.
and some in the 5-year cost comparison.
Certainly.
Okay.
So I think in our committee meetings, we've really discussed the need for body cameras and why they're important. I would argue that they're really an expected piece of equipment for police officers in today's day and age. A body camera will record and capture an accurate depiction of what happens out in the presence of an officer out on the street. That's valuable for prosecuting cases. It's valuable for investigating any complaints we may have about our staff, but they're also proven to help people behave better on both sides of the camera. So I really don't see any negatives to having them, and society is really growing to expect that police officers are wearing them. We do currently have dashboard cameras, and I do utilize those quite a bit as an administrator in reviewing complaints against officers. I'll tell you that 99.9% of complaints that come in against the officers, you find that the officer didn't do anything wrong by watching the camera and listening to the audio that accompanies that camera. And that's an important thing to have in defending our staff when what they're doing is the right thing, but also if we do need to hold them accountable, it's helpful to have that recorded accurately. So we've been looking at several different brands of body cameras. We kind of focused in towards the end of the research on 2 different companies. One is Axon. They're the same company that makes our tasers, and the other is G-Tac. Axon, I would openly say they're the Cadillac of body camera companies. They have tremendous technology capabilities. They're a cellular-based camera, so when the officers are out in the fields driving around, those cameras are uploading via the cellular network. They're always uploading. With that cellular uploading comes some other features that you can get that we wouldn't need right now, but just so you're aware that they exist. Automated license plate readers can be built right into the dashboard camera, and then they also have live streaming capability. So if I was a chief who never left the office, I could sit on my computer and watch the call that the officers are out handling. Again, features that I'm not requesting that we have at this point, nor do I think we need. The other company is GTAC. GTAC has got a large base in Minnesota. They have really good equipment. I used to buy GTAC computers when I worked for Clay County, and we always had good luck. They were a very solid product. That product is now being sold by the upfitter for our squad cars. We use a company called Code 4 out of Pelican Rapids to put all the lights and sirens and radios in our squad cars, and now Code 4 is looking to start selling GTAC. So it would be helpful to have service and replacement parts so close as Pelican Rapids. There's a cost difference in those two products between Axon and GTAC, and that cost difference, I can best demonstrate it by telling you the costs over 5 years because of the way the different companies do their billing. The Axon product is about $23,000 and some change more over 5 years than the GTAC product is. I gave the example yesterday. If you told me I had to buy a car to drive to work every day, I could buy a really nice Mercedes with auto steer and seats that curve around my torso when I go around corners, or I could buy a Chevrolet Impala, and both of them are going to get me to work. One of them has a lot of features that would be cool, but we probably wouldn't use them every day. I actually want to steer my car, and I don't need the sides of my seats to hold me up. So the analogy is that Axon is kind of similar to the Mercedes, and the GTAC is more of a let's just get the job done type of product, but I do believe it'll do the job very well and that the resolution is fine. Their back-end software is good. I don't see any issues with buying the GTAC.
Okay, any
Thank you.
questions for Chief Todd?
Just to add in, we've been looking at purchasing there. There's $50,000 set aside in the capital budget for the purchase of the body cameras. There's some money that's been put aside every year for the dashboard cameras, and we should be able to use that to do ongoing purchase. You know, the problem with any tech, there will be a budget every year. Now, you don't just buy it and put it in and go, now great, we've got it. But I think we'll need to come up with, a couple of grand a year if we just figure it in the
Right,
end.
so just so everybody's clear, the new products, they do cloud storage. Currently, we store in-house. So we're gonna be transitioning from in-house server storage to storing on the cloud, and that costs money. And with GTAC, it costs about $12,000 a year that you pay in perpetuity. So as long as you have that camera, and it might go up if we grow officers and add cameras, that 12,000 is gonna grow to a higher number because you're adding storage. So I want everybody to make sure they understand that with almost every body camera product and squad car camera product, you have to pay for storage for the data.
So it'll be a budget item we're gonna need to look at in future years for the finance committee, Ron, for sure next year, so.
You said something about 2,000, put aside 2,000 a year, but it's 12,000.
Yeah, well, we've put aside 10,000 a year to purchase dash
Already.
cameras
Okay.
already, and so, these cameras are cheaper, anyway, so we're gonna have, money to cover all but 2,000 of the 10,000, so that'll help, right, chief? I got-
Right.
It's always tricky when I'm doing math, so.
So with our WatchGuard cameras, a WatchGuard camera is our dash cam that we currently have. They cost $5,000 a piece. Heidi and I have worked together, and we've actually established a replacement, which is kind of a revolving replacement fund, because they don't last forever. So we've been placing $10,000 a year into the capital equipment fund to replace cameras. Knowing that we're probably going to have this project coming, I haven't replaced any of the cameras, and I've just been letting that money grow in the account. The new brand of cameras, if we buy the WatchGuards, if you as a council decide we want body cameras and we want to buy GTAC, the new cameras cost $2,000 for the dash cam as opposed to $5,000 from the old camera. At some point, 3, 5, 6 years, we're gonna have to start refunding that capital equipment account for replacements, because no electronics last forever, but I would certainly think they would last for 5 years. And we can pay for the cloud storage using that 10,000 for this time. Each year we can use that, and then we'll have to come up with a couple thousand more.
Yep, and then the final thing on the GTAC is opposed to the Axiom. I'm probably overselling here, but it's the GTAC is more compatible with the computers that we actually have in the squad cars right now. So anyway, so unless you got something else to add, Chief, I'd like to make a motion.
No, I'm starting to see a lot of people getting sleepy.
Yeah,
So I'll just-
exactly. So anyway, having heard all that, and I'll certainly keep selling this if you don't vote for this, but I'm gonna make a motion to approve the purchase of the GTAC.
The motion was made
And seconded,
several times,
eagerly.
so if there's no further discussion, Matt?
I guess one question, and I'm assuming you guys looked at this, but with the cloud-based storage versus in-house storage, is it a more economical choice to go cloud storage, or with the GTAC, is it not even compatible for us?
Yeah, so a lot of the companies don't even give the option for local storage, like Axon, for example, that's cloud only.
Okay.
But you have to look at replacing about $20,000 in server equipment every 7 years when you do in-house storage, and it does take a lot of data, so we would have to buy
So
about.
you looked at it, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Good strategy, Chief, it's working.
Bore you to death before you vote.
Anyway, just obviously, the chief has done a lot of work on this over the last year, actually,
We
so.
appreciate his work.
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay, and Matt, you have an item on the liquor and gambling control.
I have two, Your Honor.
Two, all right.
Item 9A is consideration to the approval of a quote to act for an access control system to the exterior doors of the liquor store. Basically, this is the way it was explained at Liquor and Gambling, is we've already got the brains of the operation. This is a key card, so employees can come and go. If they lose a key, we're not rekeying the entire liquor store. We can quick shut it down, get them a new card. The quote came in for just under $13,000. Sounds like we could do it in the next 60 or 90 days. With that, it was a unanimous approval at the Liquor and Gambling, so I would move this forward.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the quote from Access Control System for Access Control System doors at the liquor store. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
In front of you, we have item 9J, which is a special event liquor application. The Intrepid Film Festival this is their second year of hosting this event, is looking to have a bar there, that will be supplied by Spanky's. There was no, concern about this at Liquor and Gambling, so I move this forward.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a special event liquor application for Spanky's to provide a bar at the Intrepid Film Festival on July 29th, correct?
Yes, sir.
Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Brunel, will you give us a update on the status of the new water tower?
Oh, new water, okay, it's a new water tower, it's there, it's got water and it's still working.
Good. And the electrical grid's still working too?
It is, so far, so let's knock on wood. No, John's crew gave a report to the commission this morning on the proposed new water tower. They pared that down a little bit, we looked at a 2 million gallon tank, 20 foot higher. They pared that down to 1.5 million gallons.
This is replacing the big tank up on the hill over
Exactly.
here, right? Okay.
It would sit adjacent to the existing structure, and then the existing structure would come down when we were done. So they settled in, after a lot of discussion, settled in at 1.5 million gallons, 20 foot taller. The downside is whether it be 1.5 million gallon or 2 million gallons, it takes some significant foundation to do that. And that was a significant cost driver to us. They modeled the system, they did a very good job of determining what we need for storage capacity. The downside is when we started this sometime early last year, we were looking at about $4.1 million. The price today is $8.3 million. So what we're going to do is we're in the middle of a cost of service and rate study. And the commission accepted the report. We're gonna put that on the shelf for a few months. We're gonna plug these numbers into the cost of service and rate study. We're gonna find out what the impact of rates are gonna be. We're gonna watch what material pricing does and the construction climate over the next several months. Then we'll make a determination what we're going to do with that structure. The other thing is with no bonding bill, there's no PFA funding available for this. So until the bonding comes through, we can get PFA funding. We have a funding mechanism for that new structure. That plays along with their planning for that. So once the new tower is done, a few years later, probably in that 2022 26 to 2030 timeframe, we replace the standpipe, the new structure south of the lake on site to be determined yet, and then the standpipe would come down. So it's in progress, it's expensive, we do have time, with existing tower, we're not dire straits, so we can sit on this for a little bit until maybe the bidding climate calms down. Any questions?
With the additional height of the water tower, what is that gonna do with water pressure?
What do we figure, 10 pounds? So we took a look at that, that was a highly debated question about what that's gonna do to the aging infrastructure in town. When we get that new structure built, we'll slowly raise the elevation of that tower, make sure that we don't have any issues with any of the older infrastructure in town. We see something start happening, we'll hold at that point till that can be corrected, and then we'll finish it up. But with the outgrowth and everything we have outside of our existing area, we need to get that tower height up to provide pressure out on the outlying areas and our growth areas.
Renell, our population of our town is approximately 10,000 people. What's our population have to grow to before we outgrow that one, that new one?
15,000 or
This
better.
carries us through, this will carry us through projected populations of 2040, this tank, but at that point, if we keep growing past it, I mean, the tank will have a longer service
Yeah.
life than that, but we start putting storage elsewhere.
Okay.
And when we did analysis on E2Q, we looked at that 24 number, about 15,000.
Okay, thank you, Vernell, appreciate it. I have a couple of appointments I'd like to recommend to the council tonight. I don't have one for the HRA board yet, but Ron is assisting in getting us a member there. I would like to recommend the names of Josh Hochgraber and John Hanson to be appointed to the Development Authority. Josh is with Marco here in Detroit Lakes, and John is the president of First Security Bank. I think they'll both be good. They're good community people. I think they'll be good, so I would recommend those two names, and I would entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to appoint Josh Hochgraber and John Hanson to the Development Authority. And I think I would have Josh replace Phil Hanson, because Josh doesn't live within the city limits. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Dale Wild is not gonna be able to continue on the Development Authority, and I've got a couple of the city council people assisting me in finding somebody to replace Dale. I would like to recommend the name of Tim Egebraten to be appointed to the Library Board.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to appoint Tim Egebraten to the Library Board. Discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I would like to reappoint Carol Oberholzer to the Library Board.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Carol. Discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And I'm still in need of someone for the DL Community Foundation. If you have any names, they meet quarterly for about an hour, so it's not a big time commitment. So any help you can give me on that would be great. Anything else from the city administration side or city staff? In your packet, we've got the August committee schedule, and the council meeting will be
Monday, August 8th.
Monday, August 8th, instead of Tuesday, so make a note of that. We have the budget committee meeting scheduled. There's also the dates for the candidate filings, opens August 2nd. The next joint government meeting would be August 4th, and the balance of the 2022 council meetings are listed.
Quick question, Your Honor.
Yes.
On those August committee schedules, I assume those are all on that Monday that the council
Yes.
meets? Thank you.
Looks like it, yeah. Aaron, anything else?
No, I'm good, Your Honor.
Okay, Wendy?
Nothing.
Dan?
Nope.
Ron?
I just hope everybody can make it to the budget meetings. It's open to everybody, and please come and have your input.
Yeah. Ron, are you buying breakfast on the first day then, or? We got
Donuts.
Donuts. Okay, I'll be there.
Nothing, Your Honor.
A couple of things. Thank you to Public Works for 4th of July. I know it's always a busy time. I know we're in another busy time with Water Carnival. City helps out quite a bit. Thank you for doing that. To Mr. Winter, if I may, could we get an update from the 4th? A lot of incidents, no incidents. I mean,
Well, we actually didn't even discuss the fourth
Yeah,
at
we
public safety, except to point out that, that none of our officers take time off, but Chief, do you have anything you wanna add to that?
Well, the fourth one, good, no major incidents, no major injuries or deaths. It's a busy time, but overall went good, and I think a lot of people had a good time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Chief, it looks like you got to use new ladder truck as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to use that. That was, we discussed that at the public safety meeting also, and obviously, the city going forth and buying that piece of equipment and with the other one being outdated and stuff like that. On that call, we could have been a few feet longer would have helped, but, there was next closest truck able to do that work would have been Moorhead, and that individual would probably lost a leg, if not more, catastrophic because of that. So, the truck worked great, had 0 issues, and, the individual is getting to continue to cut trees.
Thank you.
That's all, Your Honor.
Okay, Natalie?
Good.
Jamie? Dan?
Well, just need to let everybody know that I will not be running for reelection this year. Yeah, for the people out there, I represent First Ward, which is roughly the north side of Detroit Lake. So people that are interested in serving the city of Detroit Lake should certainly sign up here. I think the dates are coming up. August 2nd through the 16th would be your time to come in and register with Glory. And I just want to say that if you want to make a difference in this community and help guide it through prosperity and growth in the future, this is the place to do it. You'll work with a great set of people. We have spirited discussions, but certainly can meet each other afterwards and be civil and friendly. And I will say there's a lot more to council and the input we provide than just the meeting here. There's committee work we do. There's a schedule here of 8 or 9 budget meetings, for example, that we'll be meeting on. We have strategic planning. We have other committee meetings. So this is really important work that needs to be done. I've been doing this part of it for 12 years, so it's time to let somebody else do it, but I'd encourage participation. So thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thanks, Dan, we appreciate it. So I believe the business of this council has come to a conclusion. The meeting's